Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of this. A very quick word and apology from me. I forgot to change my recording setting to record with the microphone in front of my face and instead recorded the entire conversation with the microphone that's attached to the camera. So the quality is certainly not as good as you're used to. I will do my best to not let this happen again. You can still understand everything. I've done a lot of work to try to clean up the audio and make it be as understandable and as pleasant on the ears as possible. So you can still understand everything. It's a great conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. And I will do my best to not repeat this in the future. Thanks so much for listening. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Creedle. I am very excited because this is the first time in many months that we've done a What a Week episode, but I'm joined by my always What a Week co-host, Andrew Petiprin. Andrew, how are you doing?
Zach, I'm great. It has been way too long. When I left the house this morning to tell my wife what I was doing today, I mentioned that I would be joining you on Creedle, and I reminded her. She didn't have to tell me, but it's her. Of all the things that I do in the media, my appearances with you on What a Week are her favorite. So she's probably listening right now.
Well, shout out to your wife. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I'm really glad that we can do this again. These are honestly some of my favorite episodes to record. I just have a fun time talking with you about crazy stuff that's going on in the news, what a week we've had, and doing our close reads. Probably my favorite part of the show. And we have a fantastic close read today. But before that, a little bit of banter. I went to the barber yesterday. Gave him the instructions for how to cut my hair. I think I was a little overzealous because this is very short. But do you have any stories of, bad barber instructions? And I don't blame my barber. I think he did exactly what I asked him to. I had my hair growing out like pretty long, maybe the longest it's ever been. And I was trying a new thing and it just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't deal with it. So I go to the barber and I just think I got a little overzealous. I feel like I'm back in my military days now,
I think it looks good. Yeah, I was wondering if you were starting to feel like you were kind of out of regulation or something like that. So that's
exactly what it was. Basically, ever since I've been in the military, when my hair touches my ears, I just start freaking out. Like, I can't do this. I can't stand this feeling. And I was trying to do it. This is going to sound silly. I was trying to do it through Lent. I was like, this is a challenge I can make for myself. I'll go through Lent and see how I look with like slightly longer hair. Couldn't do it. I made it to the last day of February. So 2 weeks into Lent, I failed. I've given up. So,
well, I haven't been to a barber in quite some time because I, as you can tell, I have less hair than you do. So I just take care of it myself. But back when I did go to barbers, the best barber I ever had was when I was at Yale Divinity School. There was this barber that was kind of an institution in New Haven, this Italian barbershop.
Nice.
And the barbers there were so rough. I'm telling you, like you felt like your head was just manhandled the entire time. And I swear to you, it's kind of a guilty pleasure. I loved it.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds like weird or something like that, but I would love going in there and getting all roughed up by the barber and coming out a little discombobulated or something. So
that's so funny.
I miss those days.
That's hilarious. I do think that barbershops are an institution that will endure. They're like the barbershop is sort of making a comeback. I don't know if you notice this. At least that seems to be the case in my experience. We have sort of the great cuts or great clips. We have sport clips, hair cuttery. We have all these like chain barbershops, but then we also have a really sort of vibrant sector of like individual independent barbers who are doing their thing. And I think it's there used to be all these institutions that sort of propped up civil society. I think the barbershop remains one of those. Like the church is fading. Right. Government obviously is fading. All of these sort of these other, Rotary organizations and all these, 4-H things, all these things that propped up civil society are fading, but people still need their haircut.
Yeah.
And so they're going to go to find barbers. And so I really enjoy finding a good barber. I found a great one here where we've moved, and it's just a nice place where you can go and you can hang out with other men. You talk to your barber. The barber's got a fridge, maybe stocked with some drinks, some beer, whatever. And just have good conversation. You kind of learn what the talk of the town is. The barber's super plugged in. It's a really nice thing, and I enjoy it. I think we need more barbers. We need more young men going into the trades in general. But barbering is a great trade. great trade to have. So.
Yeah, you can't do it virtually. You do actually
Precisely.
have to go in person. I mean, you remember this during COVID? This was like a thing, like people doing like, clandestine haircuts in their backyards and stuff like that because you couldn't go to barbershops and stuff.
I'm a cheapskate, so I did not coax my barber to come do a premium priced backyard haircut. I just cut my own hair. And I'll just say there's a reason I did not have a YouTube presence during COVID, because it was a self-inflicted haircut, and I do use the word self-inflicted intentionally because that's what it looked like. I remember thinking to myself after I did it, I was like, this looks pretty good. And then I look back on pictures and like videos of me from that time, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? What had I done there?
Leave it to the pros. Yeah,
exactly. Leave it to the pros for sure. It's also, so people are going to need their haircut. It's also not an industry that's going to be automated anytime soon. I've been thinking about this a lot with all of the, I'm constantly thinking about AI and love thinking about technology and how it's transforming our lives. And the trades are not going away anytime soon. We are a long, long away from the future where you'll have some humanoid robot come and rewire your house or fix your plumbing, unclog your sink, etc. And cutting your hair is one of those things. I mean, I would venture to say that you are more likely to have your, doctor's visits and physicals automated in the future than you are to have your haircuts automated. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong on that, but I really think it's one of those sort of institutions that's going to have staying power. And I love it. I love that about it. So I'm very, very pro barber and anti sort of haircuttery, great clips, all that. I think barbers are a great institution and they should endure.
I agree.
Well, let's move on to our fake news segment. So for those who have not heard this show before, those who are rejoining us, just a refresher, we do 3 different things on this show. Sometimes we'll add a bit here and there, but the first section is called fake news. That is where one of us gives the other 3 or more news articles, all of which sound absurd, 2 of which are true stories, 1 of which is fake. And the task is to find the fake one. Then we do our close read segment. That's when we have a feature piece that we review at length together. And then we close the episode with our recommendation. So we're going to start today by going into this fake news segment. And I have to say, Andrew, I think I've got some pretty good ones here. So let me go ahead and pull this up and ask you if you are ready.
Bring it on. Let's do it.
Okay. Number 1, fake news. Hot Pockets heist. This is courtesy of NBC San Diego. San Diego police surrounded a Wells Fargo bank in Charlottesville early Wednesday after a man broke in through a window, claiming he wanted to use a microwave inside the break room to warm up some Hot Pockets. Just after his arrest, a freelance photographer captured video of the man telling police about the Hot Pockets and how he'd eaten 2 of the sandwiches while inside the bank. The photographer asked the man if the ordeal was worth it. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was worth it, the man, as he was being handcuffed, replied without hesitation. A Hot Pocket? Hell yeah.
So wait a minute, is that it? Are you done with that?
That's it, done.
Yep. Wait, so let me just get this straight. So the story is a man breaks into a bank to warm up a Hot Pocket.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not to rob the bank, not to get cash, not to hold up the bank, but to warm his Hot Pocket in the break room's microwave.
Okay. All right.
So that is item 1.
All right.
Item 2 from National Public Radio. Hershey sued for $5 million over missing cute face on Reese's peanut butter pumpkins. A bit of dressing up in product advertising is to be expected, but how much embellishment do we allow before we call it a lie? That's the question at the center of Florida woman, of course it's a Florida woman, Cynthia Kelly's lawsuit. I say that, I know that you're a former Florida man, Andrew. At the center of Florida woman Cynthia Kelly's lawsuit against the Hershey Company, which makes Reese's peanut butter products. Kelly alleges she bought the company's cute-looking peanut butter pumpkins with a jack-o'-lantern wrapping in October, believing that the candy in question would match the picture, only to feel tricked, not treated. All right, so $5 million lawsuit against Hershey for omitting the cute face on the Reese's peanut butter pumpkins.
Okay.
Have you ever had that, Andrew, where you open up a package of Reese's and are dismayed that the smiley face is not on them?
It never occurred to me a smiley face would be on a Reese's, so I hadn't thought about that.
Well, Cynthia Kelly, Florida woman Cynthia Kelly sure did. So
yeah, okay.
All right, that's the second one. And the third one from CBS Los Angeles, mini road rage. Jack Morrison, a car enthusiast from Simi Valley, found himself at the center of an online auction drama that's as bewildering as it is bemusing. After fervently bidding in a heated online auction for what he believed was a sleek, full-size McLaren P1, Morris's dream of owning the supercar turned comically sour. The excitement of seeing the sales price and hefty shipping fees briskly debited from his account was quickly dashed when days later a package arrived, not with a roar of a turbocharged V8 engine, but with a gentle thud of a courier's delivery. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was a Hot Wheels model of the very McLaren P1 he thought he'd purchased. The miniature die-cast model, while meticulously detailed, was a far cry from the high-octane reality Morrison had envisioned. So man bids, it didn't say the sales price, presumably hundreds of thousands of dollars for a McLaren P1. Super excited. Amazon drops it off. It's a little Hot Wheels model.
Okay. All right, let's work backwards. The McLaren purchase, that's interesting. I have a friend who lives in Los Angeles who told me a story about he moved into a new apartment and he ordered what he thought was real, like new furniture for his living room. And it was like dollhouse furniture. And he paid, and it was a trick. I mean, he paid a lot of money for it. So I think this is a thing. I think this happens.
Amazing.
I think this is like a scam, an internet scam. So this poor man, I can't, I mean, if he can afford a real McLaren, I don't feel too bad for him, but
sure. He'll probably be fine.
He'll probably be fine, but I'm going to say that one's real.
Okay.
I don't know. I forget how we do this. Do you tell me at the end?
No, I think I tell you at the end. Yeah. I think you give me your guesses and I reveal.
Okay. I'm going to say that one's real. Okay. The second one, Hershey, the woman who sued Hershey's, Florida woman that's a good detail. And it seems like, I don't know, it seems like the kind of thing that could happen. So I'm going to say that one's also true.
Okay.
I really hope the first one is real. I think that would be so great. But I think it's too good to be true. It's too funny. I think it was well crafted, but I think that's going to have to be the fake one. So those are my answers. All
right, final answer. The Hot Pockets heist is fake. Okay. I have good news for you, Andrew. Your wish has come true because that is a real story. The Hot Pockets heist is real.
No.
Yes. Yep. I can link in the show notes.
The quote and everything?
Yes. I did not add a jot to that. Yes.
Incredible.
The quote and everything is real. Yeah.
Bravo.
So someone broke into a bank to use the microwave to microwave Hot Pockets, and he did not regret it. He said, "Hot Pocket for a Hot Pocket? Hell yeah!"
Broke into a bank. Hell yeah, Hot Pocket.
The fake story is the car, actually. Although I guess it is believable because, like you said, you had this friend who knew someone, or was it your friend, or your friend knew someone?
Yeah, he got tiny furniture delivered. Yeah,
amazing. I love that. I mean, not for him. But it's a funny story. Yeah, so this apparently is a real phenomenon that happens, but I made this one up because I'm in the market for a car. I've been in the market for a car for several months.
A McLaren?
Nope, not a McLaren P1. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. I've been in the market for a while, and I'm super frugal. I'm a cheapskate, so I've been just like monitoring all these auction sites and trying to find the right one at the right price point. And so I was thinking, what if I had finally found one, bid on it, was super excited, and got a Hot Wheels in the mail. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be able for the P1, so I would not have this problem. And if I found a P1 that I could get for my price range, I would be deeply suspicious that it would in fact just be a Hot Wheels model. So, but yeah, there we go. The Hot Pockets is real. The Hot Wheels is not.
What Hot Pockets? When was the last time you had a Hot Pocket?
It's a great question. I was actually thinking about that. I mean, reading the story kind of made me want a Hot Pocket, but it has to be at least 10 years ago. How about you?
Oh, yeah, at least more, because I've been married for 18 and there's no way I've had one since I've been married. I don't think we've even owned a microwave, to use, to heat one up. So
impressive.
Boy, it's been a long time. Long time.
I have to say, of all the modern excesses, the microwave is probably one that we have used the most. We use a microwave constantly. I mean, I feel like it's really useful, like having kids, reheat food constantly, keep your coffee warm, reheat that. So our microwave gets a workout every day. But yeah, I think that's probably a good benchmark. And yeah, I doubt I've had a Hot Pocket since I've been married either. My wife probably would not allow that to happen. So it's got to be, yeah. I mean, it'll be. I will have been married 12 years this December, Andrew. So
nice.
It's probably in that realm. I definitely had them as a bachelor, but probably not since.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. That was a good reinstallment of fake news.
Yeah.
Good job guessing. I agree with your thought process. I think I would have made the same guess if I were you. But sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
You play your cards well, because you were amused by the first one, and usually I give myself away, I think, because I'm too amused by my own fiction. But
I mean, it's that quote was so perfect. But yeah, I will include a link to the show notes for those who want to read the actual story. Okay, we're going to move on to our close read section. This is really the meat and potatoes of what we do together. And if my listeners have not heard of the Convivial Society, which is a Substack run by a man named Sacasas, you should check it out. The Convivial Society, theconvivialsociety.substack.com. I will include a link in the show notes, of course, to this article that we're talking about. But you also know, Andrew, that I really care deeply about the intersection of technology and culture and what it means for us to be human, and how that understanding of what it means for us to be human will change inevitably over time, in at least the vast majority of people's minds, despite the fact that human nature itself is unchanging. And I care deeply about how technology is affecting the way that we interact with one another, the way that we endure as humans, the way that we conceive of ourselves as unions of body and soul. And I have to say, there are few people, if any, that I know of who are writing and who are alive today, who are well-versed on the philosophical issues entailed in some of those discussions, and well-versed in the technological issues. Few people as well-versed as this man, Sacasas. So I really encourage people to read his work. I haven't known about him for too long, but since I have learned about him, really everything I've read by him is spot on. He has a collection of some of his best writing over the years on technology and philosophy and theology. He's collected that in a book, and you can buy it on Gumroad.com for $10, or it's sort of a name your price thing. But I highly recommend his work to all of you. And today we're going to talk about his most recent piece on that Substack, and it is called. It's a rather unwieldy title, but it is called "Secularization Comes for the Religion of Technology," or "How to Make Sense of Techno-Optimist Manifestos, the Open AI Altman Affair, EA/EACC movements, and the general sense of cultural stagnation." Okay, so maybe we can start. We'll try to do a good job sort of summarizing this as we talk through it. Maybe we can start with that title. Secularization obviously is talking about the phenomenon of secularization that we have been talking about for the past 100 to 150 years. Andrew, Christianity is undoubtedly, undeniably going through a distinct process of secularization that has wide-ranging implications for not just the church and for belief in general, but also, of course, for all of society, because the church has so deeply shaped society in all corners of the globe, but especially in the West. And in this title, Sacasas is talking about how that same process of secularization is also coming for the religion of technology. And he's going to sort of define what that religion of technology means. And then he talks about, techno-optimist manifestos and the Open AI Altman Affair. And my listeners are probably familiar with the Open AI Altman Affair. Did you follow this when it was happening in real time, Andrew?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. What happened was this was I think it was in January. Could have been in December, but I think it was January. OpenAI is probably the world leader in AI right now. They certainly have the most capable large language model. There are a couple competitors out there, but they're the most capable, and they definitely have the most capable video diffusion model to generate images and videos that look real. It's called Sora, Sora. They just released it last week. And this thing is really formidable in what it can do. You can look this up online, look up examples, Sora video, and you'll see that just from a simple prompt like, draw two men sitting in a room making a podcast together, Sora will generate this very realistic looking, sometimes the physics are a little off, etc., but it's very good, this very realistic looking image or video of exactly that. It's uncanny, in I think the truest sense of the word. So OpenAI is the world leader in AI technology based on the technology of large language models right now. And in January or December, I think it was January, the head of OpenAI, a man named Sam Altman, was unceremoniously deposed by the board of OpenAI for reasons that were unclear, but were sort of vaguely stated in the board press release as sort of like failure to be forthcoming and transparent with the board. And what ended up being the case is that there was just a big power struggle at OpenAI. It's still not quite clear what exactly the power struggle was around. There are various theories, but he was unceremoniously deposed. And then literally a week later, they installed a temporary CEO, et cetera. And then literally a week later, the board did a mea culpa. Several board members resigned. One of the board members who was a founding member of OpenAI and the chief scientist of OpenAI, did like a public mea culpa and signed an open letter to the board that he was on, asking for Sam Altman to be reinstated or he would quit. It was just a very bizarre turn of events and complete 360. So Sam Altman was going to go to Microsoft. They had recruited him in the meantime to go run a similar initiative at Microsoft, which also holds a significant equity stake in OpenAI. And then that ended up being reversed as well. So the Sam Altman went back to OpenAI. And it just, I think, was emblematic of a couple of things. One, the power struggle and the money involved in AI right now across the valley, Silicon Valley. But also really fundamental disagreements about the use of this technology and what it will be used for. Sam Altman has a pretty sort of like profit-oriented approach to doing this, which is why he's taken OpenAI, which is founded as a nonprofit. He's created a for-profit LLC and has basically run all of the commercial aspects of OpenAI under that LLC. And then there are others who are really intent on using OpenAI's technology to achieve artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is that's the sort of like, that has the Skynet type of implications potentially, right? This like AI that can reason for itself and really do the tasks that humans can do, potentially better than humans can do them. And there are fundamental disagreements about that and like what the path forward is for AI and how we do that. So that's what Sacasas is talking about when he says the OpenAI/Altman affair. Techno-optimist manifestos, the most prominent of these, really the only one that I know of in recent years, was published late last summer, I think, by Marc Andreessen, who is the head of the Andreessen Horowitz venture capital firm, one of the most significant venture capital firms in the world. And I think it's really called the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. And it's basically a long essay in which Marc Andreessen talks about how we have stagnated. We're still innovating and we're still like making things and smaller iPhone screens and higher resolution things, but we're not actually doing anything with that. We're not really achieving real progress. And he says, the purpose of what we're trying to do is real progress, and we need to get back to doing that. And America needs to lead from the front, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's this growing trend, and I think I'm more aware of this because of the like defense ventures community and my former background as an Air Force officer. But there's a growing trend in American entrepreneurship to lean into like American manufacturing and American innovation. And that's part and parcel of this whole thing. So Marc Andreessen at his venture capital firm, Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, also launched an initiative called the American Dynamism Project. And what they're doing is doing exactly that, investing in American manufacturing, American innovation, especially with a focus on energy and defense, et cetera. So that's what Sacasas is talking about here. Now, I just talked for a long time about the title, but I think that also helps to provide a little bit of a like backdrop for the conversation that we're about to have on this article, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was interested in the article. Yeah, that provides a lot of context for me that I didn't have. I was familiar, I guess, with the OpenAI stuff, but not. You jogged my memory. I couldn't have produced that myself, but I'm very interested in kind of the philosophical, theological stuff that comes out in this article, namely the issue of secularization. And the point that I got from the article that was really interesting was the author says in the little kind of précis before getting into the piece itself, he says the general argument is this: we've been secularizing out of a dominant religion, but that religion is not the one we assume it to be. It is rather the religion of technology. And then in the piece, he goes on to show how technology and traditional religion, namely Christianity, coexisted with each other up to the point where technology became the senior partner in that relationship, but that now that the senior partner, technology, is in a sense being secularized, such that it is no longer kind of the thing that we can point to that they did in the second half of the 19th century, the first half of the 20th century, as kind of the, akin to our ancient ancestors pointing at the stars and marveling at the glory of God, right? Like nobody's doing that anymore with regard to technology, in a sense, like whereas when they first threw the lights on in, over some American city, everyone thought it was kind of akin to a revelation from above, right? And so I think this is super interesting, just showing it's kind of a step that isn't often. I mean, so a lot of times we talk about the secularization, and we worry about the problem of technology and what all that means or whatever. But I really love how this article sort of puts it all together as one story that we need to reckon with. And frankly, I think it has huge implications for evangelism, for just like all kinds of things that are interesting to me. So anyway, those are just a few thoughts that I had, but we probably need to get into how he actually
sure this. Let's do that. No, I totally agree with you, and I think that's a good actual launching point for sort of outlining what he says here. He starts the piece by talking about as he says, the more or less standard secularization thesis. And I'm just going to read an excerpt here. He says, the standard, although now much contested secularization thesis, ascended in the 1960s, told a relatively straightforward story about the retreat of religion from modern life. According to the story, modernity was characterized in part by the exclusion of religion from public life and declining rates of belief and practice. It was also generally assumed that this retreat was final and irreversible. And he goes on to say this has been revised, rejected, and revisited. But he says, for my part, I'm partial to the philosopher Charles Taylor's account in A Secular Age. Central to Taylor's analysis is the idea that secularization is not what he calls a subtraction story, which is society minus religion, but rather secularism entails the emergence of some positive alternative, exclusive humanism in his telling, and amounts not to the necessary retreat or eclipse of religion, but rather to a change in the context and conditions of belief, wherein unbelief becomes not only thinkable, but a live option for large segments of the population, including those who continue to believe. And he says, all right, keep that in the background right for now. So if I can sort of harp on this just a little bit, you talk about the standard secularization thesis. We think about the church ascended in the Middle Ages, right? We think about the church that drove so much of our progress in the Renaissance, for example. And we even think in the more particular sort of American context, we think of the Enlightenment, we think of the Great Awakenings. We think of this time when religion really did account for so much of our decision-making in public life, of the ways that we interacted with each other. And then comes secularization. And this is a process that we can trace back to probably the 18th century. Well, certainly the 18th century. But I think it really accelerated in the 20th century, right? We obviously have, the 19th century comes along, and we have theorists like Karl Marx, et cetera, who are starting to advocate for things that are clearly anti-religious. But then we really have the advent of technology in the 20th century that really makes people, I think, question their theological priors. And and that's what emerges as sort of a positive alternative. At least that's what Sacasas goes on to say. So secularization is not so much about, devolving from believing in the God of classical theism to not believing in anything. Rather, it's going from believing in the God of classical theism to replacing that God with something else entirely. And that something is the positive alternative, not positive in a moral sense, right? This is not a good thing, but like there's something there, not nothing, right? And the something in Charles Taylor's telling, at least in part, this is sort of how Sacasas develops Charles Taylor, is the technology, right? So think about, actually, I'm thinking about the historian, the British historian Paul Johnson. He has this massive book called Modern Times, and it's basically a history of the 20th century, global history of the 20th century, which primarily focuses on the US and Europe. And if I recall, he opens that book, the very first chapter, he opens that book and talks about 1919. And he basically says modern times started in 1919. And you think, why 1919? Okay, First World War must have wrapped up, right? It was sort of that marked a delineation between old and new. No, in kind of the same way that Sacasas does this with 1939, right? He's like, it's not about the war. It's actually about Einstein's theory of relativity and the experiment that validated the theory of relativity, because that changed everything. Everything that we thought we knew about the physical world no longer held constant, and that opened up all these pathways of new belief. Obviously led to the atom bomb, but opened up all these pathways of new belief for people to embrace. And that is the real story of modern times. So I think that really dovetails well with both Charles Taylor and with what Sacasas is saying here, that there's an ascendant new religion, and it's the religion of technology.
Yeah. And the way to kind of assess it is, in the Middle Ages, if somebody said, I don't believe in God, I mean, the reaction is just one of a person who says that is not well. A person who says that is just not to be taken seriously, right? It's just because it is, the religion is the religion. That's the way that it is. I mean, we can hardly even wrap our minds around the depth of that reality now that we are in this secular age, right? But but the parallel in the technological age would then, to say something like, well, I don't believe in science, or I don't, I mean, people, right. I mean, even people who are ostensibly still believing Christians or whatever, or who like say that they belong to the previous religion or something would say, oh, well, come on, what are you talking about? Well, I mean, what they don't even know how to, they wouldn't even know how to kind of understand that objection, right? To that kind of large scale rejection of the religion itself. Right. But, and, you know, the author here makes the point that, well, I like here when he's talking about, well, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Do we want to,
Yeah, no, let's go.
Okay, well, in the second part where he's talking about the religion of technology, right? He brings up this guy David Noble, who wrote a book about, I can't see what the name of the book is here, but
I think it's called The Religion of Technology.
Okay, so he coined that term, right? And our author here, whose name I keep forgetting, Sacasas, he says Noble was quite explicit about the fact that he was not proposing a metaphor. He was not suggesting that technology was like a religion or that people relate to their devices in quasi-religious ways. All true, perhaps, but Noble wasn't interested in such things. He argued that from roughly the turn of the first millennium onward, there was a concrete, objective, historical relationship between religion. I thought that was a little more concise, but anyway. But the turn comes, right? That it's then the religion of technology, which becomes, he talks about Sacasas here in the third part, a civil religion. It just becomes the de facto organizing principle of the culture itself. And so,
well, then, if I could jump in here real quick. No, I think that's a really important thing to identify, that this is not, it's not a metaphor, and religion is not standing in for something or just sort of like filling a gap. It is a positive alternative. Again, not positive in a moral sense. This is a bad development to make religion or to make technology your God, but it is not nothing. It is not that something has been subtracted from Christianity, but rather that something has emerged as what people see as is a viable alternative to it. And I clicked into this David Noble book called The Religion of Technology, and the description of the book says Noble traces the history of these ideas by examining the imaginings of monks, explorers, magi, scientists, Freemasons, engineers from Sir Isaac Newton to Joseph Priestley to Werner von Braun. I don't know if you know about this character named Joseph Priestley. I know a little bit about him. I think he lived in Pennsylvania, but he's one of the first sort of Americans in this school of like magic, like quasi-religious, or I guess fully religious quasi-magic, I guess. I remember reading Lawrence Wright's history of Scientology several years ago. And there was in the 19th century and early 20th century, there were a lot of these very dark occult practices. And there were these sort of like high priests of various occultic things that ended up incorporating new technologies and Van de Graaff generators and all these things into their sort of religious practices and liturgies. A very bizarre kind of chapter of American history, but I think it shows this. And you fast forward to the 1980s, you have people like Ray Kurzweil, the computer scientist, advocating for transhumanism because he sort of made technology his god. And the logical end of that in his telling is the singularity, right? So this actually is a religious thing.
Is it?
I also think about, I remember a couple months ago reading about OpenAI and how their chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever, who was the same guy who ousted the CEO and then recanted and like publicly demanded he come back or he would quit. So Ilya is I think a Russian-born, obviously very brilliant computer scientist who's the chief scientist at OpenAI. I read this article that said he actually holds these sort of like quasi-religious liturgies at OpenAI about artificial general intelligence and how he's trying to sort of like bring about the age of AGI. And it's infused with this very godlike approach to artificial general intelligence, whatever that ends up being. Very, very bizarre stuff, but it's a real, people see it as a real viable alternative to classical theistic belief.
Right. And so that's why technology doesn't replace religion. It becomes the religion, right? So in other words, it isn't just, religion is no good at explaining things anymore, so we need science and technological innovation to do that. No, the technology is itself inspiring the same wonder and in a sense has the same mystery as the previous religion that it's replacing. And so here in the article, in the third section, we learn about this American historian Perry Miller, who talks about the technological majesty then is combined with the starry heavens above and the moral law within. And it says that it forms a peculiarly American trinity of the sublime. So in a sense, like for a time, then Christianity is like kind of transformed to accommodate technology, right? And so then, in a sense, like this hybrid religion is born for a while,
right?
Until things change again. But I think this is such an important point that people don't often think enough about, that technology as a religion itself, not as a replacement for religion.
Right. No, I completely agree with you, and I think that's one of the crucial turns in this piece and in the narrative that he's outlining in this piece. He talks about he outlines the religion of technology. What is it? And then he says it becomes a civil religion, and that's the key part in the American story, at least, right? Because we go from these sort of like these techno optimist occult figures out there, like Joseph Priestley and others. We go from them to then having technology sort of integrated into the very fabric of who and what America is, the very American identity. And so you can think of, I mean, this is mostly prominent in the 20th century. You can think of any number of examples. The invention of the airplane, right? The Wright brothers doing that. The Manhattan Project. I think many people probably saw Oppenheimer, right? And understand like what a important narrative that was, right? And there's debate over whether or not he actually said, the Prometheus thing, but the idea is there, regardless of whether or not he actually said it when the New Mexico test happened. The moon race, the Saturn V rocket program, the Apollo program, right? All of these things became so sort of bound up in what America is as its identity. You think of John F. Kennedy's, we're going to the moon address at Rice University. This clarion call that America will be the land of opportunity, manifest destiny. We're going to develop develop the biggest and the most powerful things. We're going to make the fastest supercomputers, et cetera. And that was so bound up with the American story for so long. That's the civil religion part of what Sacasas is talking about. And I think, from my vantage point, there's nothing wrong with that per se. It's about to get dicey because in the next part of this narrative, he talks about how religion and technology switch places, right? Mm-hmm. That's where it becomes a problem because then technology really does become your God. But it's not bad to have this idea of technological progress being a good thing that we should aim for, right? Of course, we want to aim for longer life expectancies. We want to figure out targeted, cancer immunotherapies and all these things. We want to go to the moon and explore outer space. And I think all those can be good things, but they have to be situated within the sort of humble epistemology of religious faith, of classically theist religious faith. When they don't, when those things flip places, then you start running into problems. And in Sacasas' telling, that's exactly what happened. And I think that's where the story here really starts to get interesting.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about this was a really interesting phenomenon that I hadn't thought about before, but how from the mid 19th century up to this point that you alluded to a moment ago, 1939, kind of World War II, there was this phenomenon of these world fairs, and there were these exhibitions of technology, which kind of took the place of traditional Christian pilgrimage. They became these places. I think he said that the New York's World Fair attracted like 43 million people or something.
Yeah, these were astonishing numbers. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And they became these, I've already said it. They became these pilgrimage sites, these places where you could see what the things were that were driving the culture. Which I hadn't really thought about that before. There are a couple of choice bits in here. There's this quote from this guy, this journalist Frederick F. Cook, who writes in 1893. He says, "I cherish the thought that America stands on the threshold of a great awakening. The fact that such a wonder could rise in our midst is proof that the Spirit is with us." So, I mean, again, there's the religion part, the Great Awakening obviously there were great awakenings, but at this point, the idea of what's the Great Awakening is this technological innovation. But as you said before, and maybe this is jumping ahead too far, but, the question about technology is, always has to be rooted in humanity. I mean, does anything that we do make us more human? And if the answer is no, then we don't need it. We don't want it. And, it's a really tricky situation because, even things that seem on the surface to be more humanizing very often end up having adverse effects that are destructive to us, right? So the whole question of technology is just it's really fraught. And so it's no surprise then that you end up, and maybe again, this is jumping ahead too far, but then you end up with these like people who are in the world of technology, then rethinking or repudiating. I mean, this is where you get like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, right? Who's like a mathematician and a genius and uses his technological know-how to blow people up because he believes it's all evil.
Right. Or perhaps even more directly, I don't know if you've read Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. It's
no.
account of the serial killer at the Chicago World Fair. But I think this is a great example. Like, this is a man of science, who dabbled in pharmacology and certainly dabbled in the occult as well. And he's taking advantage of the actual World's Fair to do his worst. I like that you brought up the Frederick Cook quote. I also like this one from Henry Adams. Henry Adams is a towering intellect and a fascinating person. He said he professed the religion of the World's Fairs. Yeah. He visited a handful of fairs and expeditions in the U.S. and abroad during his lifetime, including the 1893 Chicago Fair, and considered them indispensable to his education. Now, there's nothing wrong with that second part, right? Visiting the fairs and considering them indispensable to your education as a man of science, as a man of progress, et cetera. But to say he professed the religion of the World's Fairs is really fascinating, because you can imagine, 100 years prior, 500 years prior, you can imagine someone visiting all the pilgrimage sites and shrines across Europe and saying, I visited all these and I consider these indispensable to my education or my formation or whatever. I profess the religion of these, right? And this I think typifies the shift here. We've gone from embodying that religion to now embodying the religion of the World's Fairs. Just embracing sort of wholesale technological progress.
Yeah,
that's a fascinating and obviously deeply dangerous shift.
Yeah, and if I could just also add, the comparison to pilgrimage is super interesting because, of course, what's the reality of a pilgrimage? It is the sacredness of the place, right, and in a sense, like the permanence of it, that there's something permanent about the place, in as much as anything in the world is permanent, right? But where one can, commune in some deeper way, right? The World's Fairs are transitory by nature, right? I was watching this thing the other day I was flipping around on PBS, and they had a documentary about the building of the Eiffel Tower, which was done for the World's Fair. And they built not only the Eiffel Tower, but they built a huge number of buildings. I mean, all of this stuff all around the Eiffel Tower, all of which were knocked down after the World's Fair, and the same thing I think happened in New York and elsewhere. So the organizing principle, right, of these fairs was not really the place. It was not really a culture rooted in kind of the things that endure. It was precisely rooted in the things that don't endure. It's the new thing.
Right.
And it doesn't matter where it is. You can have one in New York. You can have one in, it doesn't matter, wherever. Just put it in the hot city. That's where we want it, right? So it's just interesting to kind of show what the contours or what the look of this religion is as compared to Christianity.
The final part of this essay is where Sacasas describes secularization coming for the religion of technology. So we've described the shift from religion to technology. Well, first we've described what the religion of technology is. Then we've described the sort of shift in primacy from religion to technology. And so now we have the technology religion that is front and center in American public life. This is really now part of the American story. We are a country that is not a Christian country. We are a country that is a technological country. And then the final phase here is Sacasas saying that secularization comes for the religion of technology. I'm just going to read his first paragraph here. He says, what I have in mind when I say that secularization has come for the religion of technology is relatively straightforward. The religion of technology no longer commands the kind of assent it once did. It no longer animates cultural creativity, nor does it bind the diverse society together under a collective vision for the future. It neither compels nor inspires. It rose to dominance, brought the whole scope of human affairs under its purview, sealed us off from competing sources of meaning, purpose, and value, and then simply exhausted itself, leaving a cultural vacuum in its absence. So now we're at the vacuum stage, right? We talked about how when religion goes from religion to the religion of technology, it's not about a vacuum, it's about a positive alternative. Now we're at the vacuum stage where we had this positive alternative. It wasn't a good one, but it was something. And that has now crumbled away. And now we do find ourselves in this vacuum. And I was thinking more through this, and I was thinking about, the space race, for example. John, you go to John F. Kennedy's speech at Rice University, we choose to go to the moon, and the other things too, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And he says this, and it really is a rallying cry to Americans that this is something that's worth doing. It's going to be great. We have to beat the Soviet Union, which is obviously the competing superpower on the world stage that stands against liberty and all the things we stand for. We're going to beat them at this game. We're going to do it. It's going to be really hard, but this is our national endeavor, and this is worth doing because it's a good thing and it's a great thing, right? We've gone from that to our largest tech companies having deep pockets to the tune of $1 trillion+ like Apple has on hand, and their number one goal is to help us immerse ourselves more fully in our digital isolated universes, right? Which is why Apple just came out with the Apple Vision Pro. What is it? It's a headset that you literally put on your face, and you never have to see another human being. You can see them digitally. You can FaceTime them, and you can see your avatar represented there. But you can live your entire life in this world that is mediated by a virtual reality ecosystem that is totally designed in this closed loop system that Apple has entirely created, right? That's one example. OpenAI is another one. It's the new titan on the scene. The tons of cash on hand because they have the subscription product that costs you almost $30 a month. What they want you to do is not talk with other people, but talk with their large language model. Because the more you talk with it, the smarter it gets. The smarter it gets, the more you rely on it, et cetera. And it's just this vicious feedback loop. Netflix, right? One of the FAANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Netflix wants you to watch their content. What are you doing when you're watching their content? You're not talking to anyone else. You're just watching their content. Your eyes are glued to your screen. So we've moved from this point where we were doing great things with technology to us now being further and further atomized and isolated by technology. And that, I think, is the danger of secularization, because it really does open up this vacuum when secularization comes for the religion of technology. The religion of technology is not good. What is even worse is this vacuum that is opening up within it, because that leaves us no positive alternative. It just leaves us reflexively looking inward, and we will not become better people if we do that.
Yeah. He quotes this fellow called Nye. Where is it? I forget what his first name is, but he has this quote here about how the religion of technology was effectively incorporated. American corporations presented themselves as the builders of the techno-utopian city. And he goes on to say, thus was the religion of technology enlisted by the marketing departments of American corporations. So it's, yeah, as you said, it isn't John F. Kennedy saying we're going to go to the moon. It's like, hey, look at this great self-flushing toilet or whatever. It's not interesting, and it's not necessary. It's, certainly not enough to kind of inspire the awe and wonder that turning on the lights in a big city once did in earlier days of technology. And, I think I've brought this movie up before with you. I bring it up all the time. The Disney movie, WALL-E, or the Pixar movie, WALL-E.
Yes.
I think WALL-E is a really interesting depiction of this exhaustion of the religion of technology, because it's like the world, we use up the world, and we use the innovation that we have to just blast off into outer space and just kind of hang out until we can figure out what comes next. And what are the people up there doing? They're just laying around, looking at their screens. That's it. Like, this is what all the technology has gotten us. Total soullessness, nothingness, basically.
That soullessness is such a terrifying thing as well. I mean, you go anywhere nowadays, even the grocery store, people have their AirPods in constantly. You're in a doctor's waiting room, getting the oil changed at your car mechanic. Wherever you are, people are just totally immersed in their phones, right? And I'm a relatively young person. I sound like an old fogey when I'm saying, people don't talk to each other like they used to. But I really think there's a fundamental difference here. This is not the same thing that my parents and grandparents said about my generation. This is a fundamental shift that has really happened relatively recently, and I think Sacasas nails it here. There is this secularization of the technology thing where we forget even what technology is for, and we just want to make smaller screens, better resolution, et cetera. I mean, a more viral TikTok reel, right?
Yeah,
we're not building great things anymore. And I talked about this techno optimist manifesto that Mark Andreessen wrote as a sort of in the earlier remarks here. I read that manifesto, and I read it thinking there's a lot of good here, but I didn't love it because it really is all about the religion of technology and sort of technology as a civil religion rather than a classically grounded appreciation of technology and the progress that it can achieve. So I'm not totally comfortable with all of it, but I do like a lot of it. But Sacasas is really interesting because he says the way to interpret this is not as some sort of like daring call to do something we haven't done again. It's not only, a call to return to the heyday of American manufacturing and innovation, but we really need to look at this through a religious framework, because this is really in the tradition of this sort of Great Awakening, revivalist morality sermons. Because Andreessen is really running this Jeremiah to say, we were once great because we lived up to our high calling, and we need to do that again. And the way to do that again is to invest in companies that are doing American manufacturing, energy, defense, et cetera. But when you read it with fresh eyes, understanding, okay, this is nothing more than a revivalist sermon, it makes a ton of sense. And it doesn't negate any of the truth of what he says, but it makes a ton of sense when you understand it in that framework. He's pushing back against the secularization of technology because he recognizes how empty our technology and technological development has become, and how directionless and purposeless it has been, and therefore it has also made us.
Well, and Sacasas mentions here that he says the religion of technology was always fundamentally unstable. And I think that's an important place for us to start, maybe working backwards on what to do. Technology as a thing in itself, it will never be able to bear the weight of the hope that we put on it. It will never. And so, we have to get back to thinking of humans as the starting point, and what makes us more human, to come back to that point that I said before.
You're right. I tend to not be super optimistic about these things, but there has to be some retreat from this. And I do wonder if there will be a counter movement in the future. I wonder if the Techno Optimist Manifesto will have any purchase, or other sentiments like it. I wonder if people will. I think there is a movement afoot. I don't know if that movement will be strong enough, right? There's a movement afoot too to, I don't know, like return to the glory days of the Dark Ages as well. Like there are movements afoot. It doesn't mean that they will actually come to fruition. So of course there are people who understand this problem and are working to reverse it. But fundamentally, this is a societal problem that starts from the very first principles of who we are as people, and it starts with the environment of the home and how you're raised, and it's pharmacological. What are the chemicals in your brain doing? What are you addicted to? How much screen time have you had? And so it really is discouraging to see, going back to my story about waiting rooms or whatever. It's discouraging to see people who have their kids already hooked on screens by age 2. Well, the pediatrician, the American Academy of Pediatrics says no more than 2 hours of screen time if you're 2. Well, that's an absurd amount of screen time for any 2-year-old. No. And so it does, I'm not super optimistic about this, but I do think there's a way out. The question is, will we take it? And I think Sacasas sort of ends in a similarly skeptical or cynical way. Maybe not cynical, that's probably not fair, but I think he shares my lack of optimism. He says, I'd argue that it is good that we have come to this place, as we were always bound to. The question is simply whether we can make productive use of the space afforded by this process of secularization to imagine the new techno-social configurations that do not elevate technology to a religious category, so that it might serve more proper human ends. Time will tell. And I think he's right there, because if it was indeed always inevitable, and I think he's right, that the religion of technology would eventually give way to the secularization of that religion, then it's not enough to just go back to the religion of technology. And I think that's the sort of problem with Mark Andreessen. We got to build more things and better rockets and better miniaturized reactors to give us bottomless energy so we can go all everywhere around the world. The problem with just returning that far is that we'll just repeat this again. We'll go through another process of secularization and we'll just be back where we started. So I think really we have to recover the right ordering of religion and technology in order to have technology and technological development that's properly grounded, that can advance human flourishing in beautiful ways. And that's what I hope we can do. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I have a few ideas. Maybe we can do another whole podcast on that in the future, but that's what it will take.
I think you're right. I fear, being somewhat pessimistic about this, I fear that, there may be various catastrophes that we have to endure that will maybe reset some of these things or help us to rethink some of these things. But there are days when I wonder if there's any other way besides, not that I'm Leninist about this, like we just need to destroy so we can start over. I don't think that's not going to be good for anybody, for sure. If everything were to just fail, that would be horrible. But it has happened that when, even just use the kind of mild example of nuclear power. You have a couple of accidents here and there, and nobody wants it anymore.
Right.
So
right.
Maybe something, I don't know. It's just it's tough. I don't know.
Well, I'm certainly not Pollyannish about that either, and I think the risks of genuine catastrophe are very real. Obviously, we are people of hope, so we should not live under constant fear of those things happening, but they certainly could. Nuclear disaster is one of those. I think of A Canticle for Leibowitz. I don't know if you've read that book. Science fiction, Catholic novel, but the world, it's a post-apocalyptic novel in which nuclear war has laid waste to the entirety of the world, and basically the only thing propping up civilization is the church. But New Rome is the popes had to set up camp in America, what was America, because of the waste of nuclear Armageddon. Fascinating book, fascinating author as well, who had a sad end. But I think of that, and maybe that's our future. This is now we're getting back to sort of this 1960s style of thinking about the end of the world, but there's no reason that could not still come to fruition. I think we get very comfortable in our existences here and forget about how much we've made ourselves slaves of technology, and that is where those dangers start to arise.
Yeah, and the religion of technology is essentially the conquering of nature, but every once in a while something happens in nature, and we remember actually.
Not too conquerable.
No, a super volcano could happen, or the Carrington effect could happen again. We're like 100 years overdue for that. Right. There are all these things that we can't control. We absolutely can't control.
I think one additional plug I'll make for Ellen Sacasas is, and thinking about this sort of like new techno-social construct and what might be a starting point for a return to a properly ordered relationship with technology. He has another piece on his Substack called 41 Questions, the questions concerning technology. And he's constructed these as guidelines for what proper technological development might look like. And I'll just read the first few of them here so you get an idea of what he's saying. What sort of person will the use of this technology make me or make of me? What habits will the use of this technology instill? How will the use of this technology affect my experience of time? How will it affect my experience of place? How will it affect how I relate to other people? How will it affect how I relate to the world around me? What practices will the use of this technology cultivate? What practices will it displace? What will the use of this technology encourage me to notice? What will the use of this technology encourage me to ignore? What was required of other human beings and other creatures and the earth so that I might be able to use this technology, etc. So you get the picture here. But these are deep questions, and if you go through, take any app on your phone, take your phone in general, your computer, any piece of technology you use, and go through those questions, I think you'll probably be surprised at some of the answers you find. And they might not be good, right? So I think that's maybe a good starting point, and I will commend that. I'll include that link in the show notes as well for Ellen Sacasas' 41 Questions.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Any further comments on this piece? I definitely encourage our readers to read it, listeners to read it. It is a 4,000 word piece. It's a deep and dense read, but it is very, very worth your time, I promise.
Yeah, I'm grateful, Zach, to learn of this convivial society and this writer.
Well, great. I think it is time then, Andrew, for our recommendations. I have one for today, something to watch. Do you have a recommendation?
I do. Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Shall I go first? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is shameless, Zach, but I have to do it. I want to recommend.
Oh, you preempted me, and that's not my recommendation, but okay. I do have it behind me. I was gonna pull that out and show people. I'll show you my copy. My copy, of course, gifted to me from you, so it's no surprise to you that I have it. But there it is, Popcorn with the Pope, Andrew's fantastic book. He wrote it with the two other men, David Paul Baird and Michael Ward. We're going to do an episode soon all about this book and some of the things in here. But Andrew, what is this book and why should people get it?
Well, forgive me for being so self-promoting, but I'm excited that the second printing has just come out. So I want to stick up for it and encourage people to get it. The first printing sold out in 10 days. So that's really awesome. We were really excited about that. But Anyway, yeah, The Popcorn with the Pope is a book about the 45 films on the Vatican film list. I'll look forward to coming back and telling you what the Vatican film list is all about and everything. But it's 45 great movies that are worth your time and attention if you're interested in movies and want to not only grow in your faith by exposure to great art, but just want to experience some great art. So yeah, I wrote it with David Paul Baird and Father Michael Ward, and we're really, really excited that the new printing is now available.
Fantastic. Yeah, I definitely encourage you. Thanks for my review copy of it, Andrew. I love it. This is great. My wife and I, by the way, I forgot to tell you, we've decided to just go through this entire list and watch them. It'll take us probably a year or two to do this, but we'll read the essays as we go. So
let me know what you think of the 5-hour silent movie about Napoleon.
That's there might be one or two that we skip on the list. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. Was that one of yours? Because I know you broke it up into like three assigned chunks, right?
No, thank God. Poor Father Michael had to do that one.
It's a big one. One. Well, great. Mine's also something to watch. I guess yours was something to read, but related to things to watch. Mine is actually something to watch. As you probably saw, Andrew, Alexei Navalny, the Russian dissident political opposition leader, has died. I think February 16th. So he about 2 weeks ago, he passed away. I think his funeral was actually earlier today, if I'm not mistaken, in Moscow. This was a character whom I had not known much about. I don't follow Russian politics incredibly closely. Obviously, Vladimir Putin is a thug. I think, as you are, disturbed by the sort of increasing, love of Russia from the American conservative right, and I really don't understand that at all.
No.
Very strange how we went from the Cold War, like Reagan era, to now thinking, well, at least Putin is strong. He might be bad, but at least he's a strong guy. He's got that going for him. So I really don't understand this affection for Putin. Independent of what I think about how wise it is to spend, open up the coffers and spend, bottomless amounts of money on the defense of Ukraine. Independent of that, and that's a complex discussion that we get into another time. We have to recognize that Putin is an evil man, and that he has led Russia with an iron fist. And that is especially evident after I've learned more about Alexei Navalny and his, what really I think amounts to a heroic life. I'm not saying that he was a flawless man by any means. I'm not pronouncing his canonization, but there's a documentary just called Navalny. Came out in 2022. It's on HBO Max. Is it produced, I think, is a Max original, but I think it was produced in conjunction with CNN Films. Just watch it with my wife. It is fascinating. So it goes into Alexei Navalny's life, what he was trying to do in Russia, his early political career, the assassination attempt, which itself is an absolutely wild story that I knew about a little bit, but not to the detail that this documentary explores. And then ultimately his return to Russia, his defiant return to Russia, knowing full well what might be in store for him, immediately getting arrested at customs, and then obviously being imprisoned. And he died while in custody there. And I think it's, I would just say that Russia killed him. Now, I've seen people on the internet too recently, just the past few days, saying, well, actually, he died of natural causes, so it looks like Russia's not bad. Ha ha. Well, you can't, imprison someone for 3 years, deprive them of nutrition, proper amounts of food and water, deny them medical care. All these things are documented, and they did this to Alexei Navalny. And then when he dies of, some dislodged blood clot, say that, wait, it wasn't us, right? So regardless of whether or not he was poisoned, which he, they did try to do that once before, regardless of whether or not he was poisoned or he died because of the conditions of prison, he was killed by the Russian state, the evil Russian state that has sought to suppress him. And he was standing up for the Russian people to have a voice. And that kind of story really used to inspire us in America. I hope it still does to some degree. It inspired me. I mean, it's a tear-jerking final scene, really, that you see the heroic virtue of this man who knows he very well may be going to his death. But he does it to set an example. And at one point in the documentary, he's asked what his final words are for the Russian people. And he channels his inner JP2 and says, do not be afraid. He also directly quotes he uses that quote that's frequently attributed to Edmund Burke. This is, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. But a really fascinating documentary, and seemed like I'm not saying a flawless man, but he seemed like a really good man who was trying to do a good thing. And I encourage people to watch that. So it's on HBO Max, just called Navalny. And that's my recommendation for the week.
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, let me know what you think. All right, well, that does it for this episode of What a Week. This was a fun one, Andrew. Thanks so much for doing it. To my listeners, if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to send me a note, Zac, ZAC, at creedlepodcast.com. I'll be back soon with more content. And until next time, God bless you.